All right, shut it down. It's the first Bob report of the year, so we're gonna let you slide. So, can you guys believe it's been 3 months since the last Bob report? No. Right? So, yeah, since mid-November. It's been 3 months. So, for those of you guys who don't know, we do this thing called the Bob report, and if you ask somebody what it is, they might be like, hey, this is kind of the inspirational portion of the program. Bobby's gonna give you some motivational stuff. But I will tell you what it really is for me. It's just an evolution of thought, right? Like, I'm really going through things myself and looking for things and seeking things. And sometimes there's things I'm working through in my own life and I'm just bringing them to you, right? I always remember sitting down with a guy. He was with Orangewood Church, a guy I went on a mission trip with, and I sat with him one time and we were talking and I would just kind of tell him what the things I believe and stuff like that. And he said something to me. He said, Bobby, you're a seeker. And I was like, oh, I love that word. He's like, you're a seeker. And what that meant to me was I'm always seeking the truth. I don't pretend like I know everything. I'm always like, man, if something's not right, I want to find the answer. If I'm feeling something inside, I want to find the answer. So this is what this is. This is the Bob Report, the evolution of thought. So I want to start today with something that happened this past month, which is something we call Rockstar Lunch. Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but for those of you guys who don't know, we get all the agents in different stages of their career, really, all at one table. So everybody that we announced that was a capper, everybody that we announced that was a new graduate of the mentorship program, anybody who was a top buyer, seller side. And what I like about it is you see people that have just graduated mentorship at the beginning of their journey. Some people are capping kind of at the middle of their journey. And then some people in that room are just doing some amazing stuff. And we always start every Rockstar Lunch with our blessings. That's what we do every time we start a meeting in the Alliance group. We're like, let's start out with what we're grateful for. And people will go around the room and then we ask them questions like, what's working? What's going on with you, right? And so everybody kind of says their thing and we're going around the table, but something stuck out to me. I feel like I had a spiritual experience last time when I was at Rockstar Lunch. And when Margie started to talk, and Margie said, you know, everybody's been saying that last year was the worst year in real estate and all this stuff, but she's like, I don't understand. She's like, I've had my best year in real estate.
Yep.
Right? And she wasn't the only one at the table. And something just kind of hit me, something that I kind of knew was true, but like it hit me, and it was, belief is a supernatural power. Belief, it doesn't operate with the same rules of the world, right? It doesn't care what markets do. It doesn't care what the news says. It's a very, very, very powerful thing to believe in something different, and that's what we do here. And it's crazy because I think there's evidence everywhere that belief is the way to go, that belief is a supernatural power. We see it all the time. There's evidence everywhere. If I go in any room that I speak in, I'm like, is anybody by the chance having the best year ever? And somebody will stand up, and I'm almost like, can't be the market, right? But here's the deal, some people can't see it. And it reminded me of this verse in the Bible. It says, you will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. And basically what it's saying is some people just ain't gonna see it. Some people are just not gonna see it. And I was like, but if you guys know this verse, it's because of one reason. The reason that most people can't see it is because God speaks to us in code. He speaks to us in code. Do you know what the code is? No, the code, if you guys know this verse, he was talking about parables. I speak to people in stories. And I think he does it because he's looking for the seekers. He's looking for somebody who doesn't want it spoon-fed. They want to dig a little bit deeper. And I want to tell you something. We honored some people today on that wall. You're being taught by the parables on that wall. It's the stories on that wall that make it's literally, it's written on the wall.
Yeah, love it.
Right? And the crazy thing about stories is, as I realized too, and you kind of helped me with this the other day, it was like, stories evolve as you evolve. Meaning the same story you can hear again and it'll do something different for you. Right? I think last year was the first year I just started rereading things. I'm going to read it again because every time I read it, it speaks to me different. Why? Because I've changed. I've evolved. So the story evolves. So I want to tell you a couple of parables that I've been looking at recently, okay? So one of them is this book, and I got to thank Gil for giving me this book. Anybody read this book by any chance? 3 Feet from Gold? Okay, so most of the time you hear this story, the first time I heard this story was in a book called Think and Grow Rich. Anybody read Think and Grow Rich?
Yep.
Okay, so I read that story before. I thought I knew what it was really about at that time, right? And if you haven't heard the story, there's a guy named Mr. Darby, and he got the gold rush fever, right? He heard there was gold out in the West, so he went out there. He didn't ask no questions. He got his pick and his shovel. He went out to Colorado to start digging for gold, right? Is this a real guy, right? Starts digging for gold. And as the story goes, he digs and digs and digs, and finally he hits some gold, and he's like, man, I'm on it. I'm on it now. I found some gold. But he's like, man, I only have a pick and a shovel. I can't actually get all this gold out without like heavy, expensive machinery. So he goes back to Maryland. He goes to his friends and family. He's like, listen, I need to borrow some money. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get you paid. So he buys all this machinery, spends all these thousands of dollars to do it. He goes out there, and just as he's about to like get all the money back, be able to pay them back, gold runs out. And he keeps digging and digging and digging, and he just gets frustrated and he quits. And as the story goes, he sold his equipment to a local junk man, and the junk man went out there and started digging again. Turns out that he stopped digging 3 feet from gold, right? Which is where you hear that term every time, 3 feet from gold. You're almost there, right? But I read it again, and I read this book, and it elaborates a little bit. But the story really isn't about the guy that missed it. It's about the junk man. So this is what it says about the junk man. It said, for years, this junk man had been looking for a way to break into the mining industry. He had studied mining for over a decade, and he had always believed it was his destiny. So he didn't just quit 3 feet from gold. Quitting is a result of a weak mission. His only mission, Mr. Darby's mission, was making money, right? And that wasn't a good enough mission for him to care enough about completing the mission. So I love the $750 million goals, but we need something else too, right? I think we create leaders and entrepreneurs with a heart to pay it forward. That's our mission here. And if we do that, we're going to hit 750 million, right? So the story continues. There's another part of this story too, right? And we say this in this office all the time, and it's true. Actions get results, okay? But here's the deal. At some point, you got to switch to strategy slightly. So actions get results is a great phrase if you're stuck, or if you're not doing anything, or you're not doing enough, right? You got to move. You got to take some action. Actions get results. I don't care what the action is, you need to start moving if you're not moving right now. So that's a great phrase for when you're getting started. But the thing is that there are some times in life where you just have to keep pushing. Yep. And if you're there, that's cool. But sometimes, like the junk man didn't just start digging the same way the other guy started digging. Number one, he researched it, so he had been studying this, but he went and got wise counsel. He went to a geologist and said, hey, listen, I got this huge opportunity. I need to capitalize on it. What do we need to do? You know what I ended up finding out was, hey, the geologist said, hey, he found the gold. He was in the right place. But what he did was, the way that gold runs, it runs in a vein. And all he did was puncture through the vein and was on the other side of the vein. If he would actually kept digging perpendicularly, he would have stayed on the gold and found the biggest gold store that has ever been found in Colorado. And that's what the junk man found. So I'm going to change this phrase for you a little bit, because I think this is what some of you guys need right now, is focused action gets big results. You know, Richard Abar even said it. You know, he didn't tell you 10 things to do. What did he tell you to do? Make a call. Make your freaking calls. And make them consistently. So some of you guys are spreading yourself in 12 different directions, and now it's time for you to focus. Because I'm a believer that focused action gets big results. If you want big results, if you just want some kind of result and you're stuck, just take an action. Okay? So there's another parable that I've been reading called The Surrender Experiment. Okay? So I actually listened to this book years ago, and I listened to it again recently. Man, It hit different this time again. The story evolved for me. So this is a guy named Michael Singer. He's a real guy, right? He's a multimillionaire business owner, but he didn't even start out with that dream. This is his only mission that he started with. He said, I want to eliminate the chatter in my mind. You guys know that chatter that I'm talking about? Like, I had it last night before I went to bed because I was working on this presentation and I couldn't figure out how, I was like, I went to sleep and I couldn't stop the voices in my head. All he said was, man, one day he's talking to his friend and realized those voices aren't me. There's some kind of chatter here and I just want to figure out how to stop it. I want to stop these voices because they're what causes all the anxiety in our minds. They cause all the pain in our lives is these voices, right? So he went in the middle of the woods. He's like, listen, everybody leave me alone. I'm going to go meditate. And he just would meditate. But he found that he was great when he was meditating, but when he got back to real life, the voices would start up again. And he's like, well, maybe it's not that I just need to shut these off. I need to figure out what's motivating the voice in the first place. So what he figured out is that most of the voices came from his personal likes and dislikes. It's what he thought that something was or wasn't, what he liked about it or didn't like. So before he even endeavored to do something, the voices would start. Is this meeting worth it? Should I go here? Do I really want to go there? Right? And all these voices would start. So he embarked on the experiment of a lifetime, is what he calls, a journey into life's perfection. He decided, if something comes up and I am resisting it simply because of something personal, I'm just going to do it. And I'm just going to follow it. And he started to truly surrender, let it go, right? And guess what? Ended up starting a company he didn't want to start. He started multiple companies he didn't even want to start. Somebody's like, hey, can you build us a house? Because he had built his own property. He's like, okay. Then suddenly he had a construction company. And then somebody asked him about a computer program. He started to code on his own, just found a computer at Radio Shack one time. Was like, this is interesting, whatever. Ended up building one of the biggest software companies ever through just following the path. But you have to believe something special. I know that's a tough thing to do. I tried it recently. So there was a wedding I got invited to. And as you guys, I don't know if you guys know me, but like, if you're a good, somebody I know for years, yeah, I'm going to your wedding. Right, but somebody asked me about a wedding. It's far away. I don't know most of the people at the wedding. I'm usually trying to avoid it. I don't know if you know this, but I'm about to be 45. I've never been married, so I'm just not. But it's fun, right? Matter of fact, I joke around a lot of times. People say I'm getting married. I'm like, oh, I gotta go eat my steak cake. But here's the deal. I decided to say, I was like, you know what? I'm resisting this. So I called up and I said, I'm coming to the wedding. And she's like, well, I got one more thing for you. I've been having a tough time asking you about it. And I'm like, oh, what's up? She's like, will you minister our wedding? I was like, okay, God, is this you? like you told me something? So it's just an interesting experience. But you have to believe something to start letting go. And here's what you got to believe. To unlock the supernatural, you must believe you're being guided. Right? You must believe that you're in the right place at the right time with the right people. That people are showing up in your life right now that are supposed to be there, that are that link to the next opportunity, the next thing. You have to believe that in your heart. Okay? But I gotta warn you, you're gonna get tested. Because you can't allow the supernatural in without the test. There's no promised land without a desert. No promised land without the wilderness. And I just found out this week, actually the past couple of weeks with my team, like you should see their face. I've given them tests because we're reading a book together. And every week they read a chapter and I give them a test. You should see how they change when the test comes out. I take out a piece of paper. People hate tests. I think after this you should love it. I think after this you should think, oh, I'm being tested. That means I have an opportunity to allow a miracle in. Because this year, what's our word? Multiplication. It's multiplication. Gil said something the other day, I loved it. He said, we're going to turn pluses into X's. We don't want linear growth, we want exponential growth. And for you to do that, you're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to get them comfortable. And you're going to be tested. And I'll leave you with this last short parable that comes from my boy Gil. And I'll always say that this is, if anybody asks me, he's like, why are you business partners with Gil? I'll point to this very moment. There was a time where we were in really bad shape. We were trying to buy this property. We didn't have the money. And I was about to lose all the money that I had saved up. He was going to lose a significant amount of his money, and we were in dire straits. And I don't know what prompted this, but I came in and we were trying every last-ditch effort. And I said, I'm not expecting a miracle. And Gil looked at me and he said, I am. And the way he said it, it shifted me. And the message and the story of that parable was faith is a mindset that expects God to act.
Well said.
Happy Valentine's Day.